Hello. My name is Lyra Mercer. And I am here to tell you about the day my sister's life almost ended, and how my world did too. You think you know what control looks like? What it feels like to be a puppet in someone's game. Wait until you see the way he manipulated her. Wait until you see what it takes to finally break free. The sun had that warm, deceptive glow Chicago gives you before something breaks. The kind of light that makes you think the world is gentle. It wasn't. Not that day. The air smelled like fresh-cut grass and burnt rubber from the golf carts parked near the edge of the green. I remember holding my phone in one hand, scrolling through a work email, pretending I wasn't waiting for another argument to start between them. Serena laughed a little too loudly, that nervous kind of laugh women use when they're afraid to look fragile in public. Waylon's voice was even, too even. "You're making a scene, Serena. Can we not do this here?" She was 7 months pregnant. Her belly rounded out the soft blue dress she'd bought last week. I could still hear her excitement when she called me to say it fit perfectly. And now, she looked small, smaller than I'd ever seen her, as she backed away from him near the 8th hole. I saw him tighten his jaw, the way he always did when he was pretending to stay calm. I knew that look. I'd seen it at family dinners, when Serena said something that didn't align with his plans. It was the calm before humiliation. He always chose his moments when no one else was watching. Only this time, I was there. "Wayland," I said softly, trying not to sound afraid, "just let's go home. You both need to cool off." He didn't answer. His eyes were fixed on Serena. His hand gripped the golf club like he was checking its weight. A slow exhale escaped him, controlled, practiced, like he'd done it before. Serena's voice trembled. "I just said I wanted to visit Mom for a few days. That's all." "That's all?" His tone cut through the golden quiet. "You don't get to just leave when you feel like it, Serena." It happened faster than my brain could translate. The sound wasn't loud, but sharp. The club moved in an arc, catching the sunlight as it came down. For one heartbeat, the world froze, then Serena crumpled. Her knees buckled, her hands instinctively went to her stomach. The sound that came from her was more breath than scream. I dropped my phone. It hit the grass with a dull thud. My body wouldn't move. The air felt thick, like I was trapped underwater. My voice wouldn't work, every instinct told me to scream, to run, but my legs were sand. Wayland stood over her, his breath steady. "It was an accident," he muttered, more to himself than to me. She stumbled. I stared at him, at the calm in his voice, at how his hand didn't even shake. Serena's eyes fluttered open, her face pale. "Lyra," she whispered, "I'm okay, just please help the baby." Her voice snapped something in me. I fell to my knees beside her, the smell of iron in the air. Her blood was darker than I expected, seeping into the green blades of grass. My hands hovered, unsure where to touch, afraid to hurt her more. "Serena, stay with me, all right? I'm calling for help." Behind me, Wayland's voice came again, smoother now, like nothing had happened. "She fell, Lyra. You saw it." I turned to him. "Saw what?" "You hit her." My words came out as a whisper. My throat felt raw, the kind of dry that tastes like metal. He shrugged. "She lost her balance. Don't make this worse than it is. You always overreact." Those words, "you always overreact," felt like ice sliding down my spine. He'd used them before, not to me, but to her. Every time she cried. Every time she tried to explain the bruises she brushed off as accidents. I wanted to hit him, but fear pinned me down harder than gravity. I heard a faint moan. Serena's fingers twitched against mine. "The baby," she breathed again. My brain finally caught up. "Call 911, I said, but my hands were already shaking as I grabbed my phone from the ground. My voice cracked as I spoke into the receiver, words stumbling over each other. The operator's calm tone felt cruel against the panic tearing through me. "Yes, emergency at Lakeside Country Club, my sister, she's pregnant, she's been hurt." Wayland stood a few feet away, staring at the trees, like he was calculating his next move. When I looked back, his face was empty, expressionless. He didn't even bend down to check on her. When the sirens came in the distance, the sound split the quiet open. The first responders moved fast, their voices professional, distant. I watched as they lifted her onto the stretcher, her hand reaching for mine. I held it tight until they pushed her toward the ambulance. Wayland finally spoke again, his tone low enough that only I could hear. "Don't say anything stupid." The stress probably made her fall. You'll make it worse if you start talking. I stared at him. The sunlight hit his face just right, making his eyes look almost kind. Almost. You think you can twist this again? I whispered. He gave me a small, practiced smile. Lyra, you know Serena's been emotional lately. Hormones, anxiety. She'll tell them herself she tripped. The paramedic called for me. Ma'am, are you coming? I turned back to Serena. Her face was gray, lips trembling as the oxygen mask covered her mouth. Her eyes met mine for one fleeting second, fear, trust, and something else, resignation. Yes, I said. I'm coming. In the ambulance, everything smelled like antiseptic and metal. The world blurred into sirens and hospital lights. I held her hand, whispering her name like it could anchor her. Her skin was cold, her breathing shallow. I could see the rhythmic movement of her chest under the straps. Wayland followed in his car. I could see his headlights through the back window. He didn't speed. He never needed to. He had time, money, and the truth on a leash. At the hospital, doctors flooded in. Machines beeped. Voices blended. Someone said, "Emergency C-section." I felt the room tilt. "Ma'am, you can't stay here," a nurse said gently, guiding me out. My feet moved on their own. I ended up in a cold waiting room, staring at a wall clock that didn't seem to move. Minutes stretched into hours. Wayland sat across from me, scrolling his phone. No guilt. No fear. Just irritation, like this was an inconvenience. Finally, a doctor approached. Her eyes gave it away before she spoke. She's stable, but critical. The baby's in neonatal intensive care. I nodded, though my body didn't feel connected to my head. Can I see her? Soon. She's asking for you. I walked into the room. The sound of machines filled the air like a low hum. Serena lay there, her skin pale, her body a map of exhaustion. I sat beside her, brushed a strand of hair from her face. Her eyes opened slowly. Lyra, she murmured. I'm here. I fell right? I froze. Serena, you didn't fall. Her gaze flicked to the door. He said I did. Serena, listen to me. You didn't. Tears gathered at the corners of her eyes. He'll make them believe it. He always does. I wanted to promise her it would be different this time. But when I looked at the door and saw Wayland's silhouette through the frosted glass, the words wouldn't come. I just held her hand. Quietly. Gently. Slowly. The night outside the hospital window was black and endless, the kind of dark that doesn't comfort, it just swallows. I kept hearing her voice, "Help the baby." I stood, walked to the window, and whispered to the glass, "This isn't over." My reflection looked back at me, tired, furious, alive. Justice wasn't here yet. But it would come. Softly, quietly, step by step. I didn't go straight home after the hospital. I drove. Not with purpose, just movement. The city passed me in muted colors, headlights bleeding into the windshield like watercolors running in the rain. Every stoplight felt like a question I didn't know how to answer. My hands clung to the steering wheel tighter than they needed to. I just needed to keep moving. When I finally turned into Serena's driveway, the porch light was on. The house looked exactly like it always had, picture perfect. As if nothing violent had ever passed through its walls. As if it hadn't just seen a woman almost die inside it. It welcomed me with a warmth I no longer believed in. Wayland opened the door before I knocked. His expression was calm. Too calm. You didn't have to come back tonight, he said, voice smooth as ever. She's resting. Doctor said she should be fine. I didn't answer. I stepped inside and felt that same old pressure in my chest return. The walls seemed to lean in just slightly, the way they always did when I knew I wasn't truly welcome here. Serena was on the couch, tucked under a gray knit blanket. Her face was pale, and her hands fidgeted in her lap like they didn't know where to rest. She looked up when I entered, and for a second, her mouth twitched into something like a smile. Hey, she whispered. I crossed to her slowly. My legs felt uncertain, like the ground beneath me had lost its shape. I knelt beside her, brushing a loose strand of hair from her face. How are you feeling? Better, she said, though her voice betrayed her. She didn't meet my eyes. They said the baby's doing okay. That's all that matters, right? Behind me, Wayland chimed in casually, walking into the kitchen. She just got lightheaded. The stress. It's been building. These things happen. I stood up slowly. You hit her. His laugh echoed off the granite countertops. Lyra, come on. You saw what happened. She stumbled. She's pregnant. Her balance isn't great. I saw you raise the club. My voice was steadier than I felt. Wayland stepped out from the kitchen, wiping his hands with a dish towel. That's not what happened. You're upset. Understandably. But don't twist things. That's dangerous. Serena's voice came soft behind me. It wasn't his fault, Lyra. I was clumsy. I got dizzy. I turned to face her. Her eyes were wide, glassy. The kind of wide that says someone else's script is playing in your head. Sweetheart, Wayland said, walking toward her. Don't stress. Lyra just needs time to cool off. Cool off? I repeated. You cracked her ribs. He didn't blink. You're being dramatic. You always jump to conclusions. This is why people stop listening to you. I felt my breath catch. That phrase. He'd said it before. At Christmas, when I pointed out how Serena flinched when he brushed past her too quickly. At Dad's birthday, when she didn't speak the entire dinner and I asked why. You always jump to conclusions. He was rewriting the truth in real time, and she was nodding. Accepting. Swallowing it whole like she didn't know how to say no anymore. I don't want to fight, Serena said. Her voice was thinner now, like a child trying to mediate between adults. Can we just let it go? I'm fine. Really? No, I said. You're not. She looked up at me, her eyes full of something I couldn't name. Not fear. Not quite. Maybe shame. Or something close to it. I tripped, she said again, quieter. That's what I'll say. That's what happened. Wayland came to stand behind her, hand resting gently on her shoulder. She's been through enough today. Can't we just keep things simple? I stared at his hand. My fists clenched. You're good at simple, Wayland. You've spent years making things simple. Making her small enough to manage. Easy to discredit. Quiet enough to ignore. He tilted his head, pretending to be amused. You should be careful, Lyra. You're making accusations you can't prove. And she's already said it was an accident. My voice dropped to a whisper. Because she's afraid of you. She's tired, he said. And confused. You're making it worse. Serena's hand reached for his. Instinct, maybe. Habit. I couldn't tell anymore. I just want peace, she whispered. And he's counting on that, I said. He knows you won't fight back. You never do. Wayland's expression didn't change. Do you hear yourself? You're turning a difficult moment into a witch hunt. Families don't survive that kind of thinking. I'm not part of your family, I said. Not anymore. There was silence. A cold, still pause. Like the house itself was waiting to see who'd speak next. Finally, Wayland smiled again. You'll come around. You always do. Serena needs support, not drama. I am her support, I replied. Serena looked between us, eyes filled with something like apology. Or resignation. Maybe both. I couldn't stay. The walls were pressing in again. I walked to the door. Wayland didn't follow. He didn't need to. He'd already planted enough doubt in Serena to last weeks. As I stepped outside, the air hit me like a slap, cold, sharp, real. I sat in the car for a while before starting the engine. My fingers trembled on the key. Inside, she was still under his spell. But not forever. This wasn't the end. I took one last look at the house, the porch light still glowing warmly like nothing was broken. Then I drove off, slowly, gently, like I was holding something fragile inside me. The morning light poured through my blinds like a confession. Too honest, too bright. I hadn't slept more than a few hours since that night at the house. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Serena's face, pale under that blanket, whispering excuses she didn't believe. I could still hear Wayland's calm, condescending voice playing in my mind. She just fell. You're making it worse. I sat at the kitchen table, coffee gone cold, laptop open. I told myself I was just checking emails, but my fingers typed his name before I even realized. Wayland Pierce. His company, his business history, his friends. I'd spent my life building cases for clients, proving strangers guilty of crimes they swore they didn't commit. But this time it wasn't work, it was survival. My search led to fragments, company credit cards, a trust fund under Serena's name that she didn't even know existed, money transfers that didn't add up. Each discovery made my heart beat faster, anger sharpening with every click. The phone buzzed. Serena. Hey, she said softly, her voice strained. He said you were looking into him. Is that true? I froze. He told you that? He said you're upset, that you're making yourself sick over nothing. Lyra, I don't want to fight. I just want things to go back to normal. Normal? I whispered. You almost died, Serena. There was silence on the other end. Then, softly, I tripped. I closed my eyes. You're repeating him. No. She stopped. He takes care of me. He's stressed, Lyra. You don't understand him like I do. I understand enough, I said. You've been defending him for so long, you don't know where his voice ends and yours begins. She sighed, a sound that cracked at the edges. He said you're trying to turn me against him. That's not what sisters do. The line went quiet for a moment before she whispered, you've always wanted to be the one who saves people, but not everyone needs saving. Then she hung up. I stared at the phone, her words echoing like a slap. The guilt hit hard, because part of me knew she wasn't entirely wrong. I'd spent most of my life trying to fix what was broken in others to avoid looking at what was cracked in myself. But this wasn't about me. That night, I drove back to the house. I told myself it was to check on her, but it was more than that. I needed to see the lie up close. The driveway lights glowed warm and steady. Through the front window, I saw them sitting together on the couch. Serena's head rested on Waylon's shoulder. His hand stroked her hair in slow, rehearsed motions. I stood in the shadows of my car, stomach twisting. When I finally knocked, Waylon opened the door with that same calm mask. Back again, he asked, smiling faintly. You should really take a break from all this worry. You look exhausted. I need to talk to Serena. She's resting. Doctor said stress isn't good for the baby. I'll be quick. He stepped aside, reluctantly. The living room smelled like lavender and something sweet, cookies, maybe. It was almost comical, the effort to make everything look peaceful. Serena sat on the couch, wearing soft pajamas and a distant expression. Hey, she said quietly. You didn't have to come. I sat beside her, lowering my voice. I found something. Her eyes flickered. Lyra. I need you to listen. There's a trust account in your name. He's been moving money into it, using your signature. Did you know that? She frowned. No, that can't be right. He said he was handling our finances. Exactly, I said. He's handling them all right. There's money missing. Money you should have control over. Waylon entered the room then, carrying 2 cups of tea. He handed one to Serena before turning to me. You always were good at drama, he said softly. You take half-truths and spin them into horror stories. Half-truths? I asked. Because your wife doesn't even know about the account with her name on it? He laughed. You think you're uncovering some big scandal? Families share finances. We don't keep secrets here. Except, maybe, you. I felt my hands tremble. You hurt her. She fell, he said evenly. You were there. You hit her. He met my gaze. You really should be careful with your words. Defamation isn't something you can just walk away from. Serena's voice cut in softly. Waylon, stop. Please. He turned to her, expression softening immediately. Sweetheart, I'm just trying to protect us. She's under a lot of stress, that's all. She reached for his hand, and something inside me snapped. Serena, look at me, I said. He's lying. I have proof. You don't have to live like this. Her eyes filled with tears. You're scaring me, Lyra. No. He's scaring you, I said, voice breaking. Waylon's tone turned colder. You've said enough. Go home. I stood, my pulse pounding in my ears. I'll go, I said quietly. But this isn't over. He followed me to the door, stopping just behind me. You really should stop, Lyra. You're making yourself look unstable. People talk. I turned to face him. You're afraid. That's why you keep talking. His smile faltered for the first time. You don't scare me. Good, I said. Because I'm not trying to scare you. I'm going to expose you. I walked out before he could reply. The night air hit me, cool and sharp. In the car, I opened my laptop again. I didn't want to wait. I searched deeper, his company accounts, old property records. Patterns started to emerge. Payments to unknown entities. Loans under Serena's maiden name. Emails linking him to someone I didn't recognize. The clock on the dashboard read 1:17 a.m. when I found it. A transaction for a consultant fee paid from Serena's account to an offshore firm. The signature looked familiar, it was hers, but not hers. I printed everything. My hands shook, but my mind felt clear for the first time in weeks. The next morning, I went back to the hospital to see her doctor. I needed confirmation. The bruising on her ribs, I asked carefully, does it look consistent with a fall? The doctor hesitated. I can't comment on that. So that's a no, I said softly. Her silence was the answer I needed. When I arrived at Serena's house later that afternoon, the curtains were closed even though the sun was bright. She opened the door slowly, as if expecting bad news. Can we talk? I asked. She nodded, stepping aside. We sat at the kitchen table. I slid the printed papers toward her. She hesitated before picking them up. I watched her face change, confusion, disbelief, fear. What is this? It's him, I said. He's been planning this for months. Financial abuse, control, lies. Her hands trembled. I don't understand. You don't have to. Just look at the dates. The withdrawals, the forged signature. He's building a way out, and leaving you to take the fall. She shook her head slowly. He wouldn't do that. He loves me. Does love look like bruises? Does it sound like silence? Her breath caught. He said I was dramatic. That's how it starts, I said gently. He needs you to doubt yourself. For a long time, she said nothing. The clock ticked on the wall. Finally, she whispered, if you're right, everything I believed. Everything is gone. I reached across the table, taking her hand. It's already gone, Serena. I'm just helping you see it. She pulled her hand back, wiping her eyes. You're asking me to destroy my marriage. I'm asking you to save yourself. The front door opened before she could answer. Wayland stepped inside, his expression darkening when he saw the papers on the table. What's this? He asked quietly. Serena's voice faltered. She found something. He picked up the pages, flipping through them. His lips curved into a small, mocking smile. This is your big proof? Bank statements? You really think you know what any of this means? I know enough, I said. You don't know anything, he said, leaning closer. You've always been jealous. You couldn't stand that she found someone who loved her. That's not love, I said. That's control. He threw the papers down, his calm mask slipping. Get out. Serena flinched. Wayland. He didn't look at her. Now. I gathered the papers slowly. You can keep pretending, but the truth is out now. He leaned close enough that I could smell the mint on his breath. You'll regret this, he whispered. Not as much as you will, I said softly. When I walked out, I heard Serena call my name, her voice shaking. I didn't turn back. Some truths couldn't be shared yet. Not until she was ready to see them. At home, I spread the papers across my desk. The evidence was there, clear, undeniable. He'd built an entire lie around her life. I whispered to myself, every step I take toward the truth, I'm tearing down the world she's still living in. But how can I let her stay in a lie? The printer beeped as I made copies for safekeeping. Somewhere between exhaustion and clarity, I realized this was only the beginning. The apartment was quieter than usual. The only sound was the hum of the refrigerator and the soft tapping of my fingers on the keyboard. I glanced at the clock, it was nearing 10 p.m. The evening had swallowed the day, leaving a stillness in its wake. I hadn't been able to sleep much, not since the hospital, not since the moment I saw Serena's bruised face and heard Wayland's words. He had the audacity to pretend nothing happened, to claim it was an accident. It wasn't. I knew it, and now I had the evidence to prove it. I felt it all, anger, frustration, the weight of responsibility for Serena's silence, her complicity in the lie that Wayland had woven around her life. The papers in front of me were the beginning of the end. Documents, financial records, statements from friends who had witnessed bits of Wayland's true nature. My mind raced as I sifted through it all. What if this wasn't enough? What if I couldn't prove the truth? What if Serena wasn't ready to see it yet? But I had to try. For her. For myself. For the years I had stood by, watching her slip further into Wayland's control. I closed my eyes for a second, taking a deep breath. You can do this, I whispered under my breath, though I wasn't sure I believed it. Serena's voice echoed in my mind. He said I was just being dramatic. The guilt she felt, the constant self-doubt, Wayland had conditioned her to believe she was the problem. And yet, here I was, carrying the burden of both our truths. The phone rang, pulling me from my thoughts. Lyra, Serena's voice came through, shaky, uncertain. I need to talk. I could feel the weight of her words before she even finished. Something had shifted. She was cracking. I'll be there in 20 minutes, I said, my voice steady. As I drove, the streets of Chicago seemed emptier than usual, the city lights blurring past. I wondered if this would be the night everything changed, or the night it all came crashing down. When I arrived, Serena was waiting on the porch. The light from the house cast long shadows across her face, making her seem smaller than she was, fragile in a way I hadn't seen before. She wasn't just physically broken from the attack, there was something deeper, something I couldn't quite name but felt in the air between us. I stepped out of the car and walked toward her. She didn't speak at first, just stood there, staring at the ground. I reached for her hand, and for a moment, it was as if we were back in our childhood, the world just the two of us. But this time, the distance was wider than I could bridge with touch alone. Serena, I said softly, I have the evidence. He's been lying to you. To both of us. She pulled her hand away, her eyes wide, searching. Lyra. What are you talking about? I pulled out the file from my bag and handed it to her. The pages were filled with details that made her stomach drop. Financial records. Emails. Transactions to offshore accounts under her name. She held the pages, reading slowly, disbelief settling on her face. He did this, she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Yes, I said. He manipulated everything. Your money, your trust. And it started long before what happened at the golf course. She dropped her head, tears spilling over her cheeks. I didn't want to see it, Lyra. I didn't want to believe it. I stepped closer, wrapping my arms around her. I know, sweetheart. I know you didn't. But he can't control you anymore. I've been so stupid. No, I said firmly. You've been caught in a web, Serena. And you're not the only one he's done this to. She pulled away from me, wiping her eyes. I don't know if I can do this, Lyra. If I can face him. I don't even know where to start. I took her hands in mine. We'll face him together. Just then, the front door opened, and Wayland appeared. He was wearing a robe, as if nothing had happened, as if everything was still normal. I turned to him, every part of me boiling with rage. It's over, Wayland. You've lied long enough. I've got the evidence. His smile faltered for a moment, but only for a moment. He stepped forward, calm, unshaken. You're overreacting, Lyra. This is all so unnecessary. Unnecessary? I echoed. What you've done to her, what you've done to this family, has been unnecessary from the start. He moved closer, his eyes cold. You should have learned by now, Lyra. People like you always try to expose things that aren't there. And when you can't, you start making it up. I could feel Serena's body trembling beside me. I turned to her. She looked lost. But I couldn't let that stop me. Serena, I said, my voice steady but full of emotion, he's been feeding you lies. He's been feeding you a lie that makes you doubt yourself. But I won't let you believe it anymore. Serena looked at Wayland, then back to me. Her face twisted in pain. But I loved him, Lyra. How can I just turn away from that? You don't turn away, I said. You face the truth. You stand tall in it. For you, for your child. Wayland took a step back, his eyes narrowing. You'll regret this, both of you. I stepped toward him, my resolve hardening. No. You will. I knew this moment was just the beginning. But I couldn't let fear stop me now. There was no turning back. I turned to Serena. It's time to make him pay for what he's done to you. And I meant it. I sat at my kitchen table, the evidence spread out before me. Pages and pages, documents, photos, emails, things that could finally break the facade that Wayland had spent years building around Serena. But as I stared at the printed words in front of me, all I could think was, is this enough? I'd spent hours gathering this information, cross-referencing transactions, checking timestamps, speaking to people who had known him longer than I had. Each detail led to another, each revelation a little more damning than the last. Wayland was meticulous, careful, but he wasn't careful enough. The lies he'd built, about money, about Serena's life, about everything, were unraveling. I glanced over at my phone. I hadn't heard from Serena in hours. I knew she was struggling, not just with what I had shown her, but with the reality of everything she had been forced to believe. She had spent years defending him, believing him when he told her she was crazy, when he minimized her fears, when he twisted her reality until she questioned everything, even herself. It had been so much easier for her to hold on to the lies. She didn't want to see the monster beneath the carefully cultivated image of the perfect husband. But now? The truth was sitting in front of her, and I could only pray she was ready to face it. A knock on the door startled me. I jumped, my heart racing for a brief second before I recognized the sound. It was Serena. I hadn't even realized how tightly I was holding my breath until she was there, standing in the doorway, looking fragile in the way only someone who has been through too much can look. "Lyra," she began, her voice small, barely a whisper. I can't do this." I stood and walked toward her, slowly, carefully, like approaching a bird that might fly away at the wrong movement. "Serena, we've been through this. You don't have to do this alone." "I know," she said, but her eyes were distant, somewhere far away, trying to process everything. "I feel like I don't even know myself anymore. Like I've been living someone else's life." I nodded, the weight of her words settling between us. I'd watched her for years, trapped in that life with Wayland, afraid to break free, afraid of what would happen if she did. I had been the one to watch from the sidelines, the one who stood in the shadows, always the observer, never the hero. But now, that was changing. "You're not alone in this, Serena," I said, reaching out to take her hand. "We can start over. We can fix this." She looked at me then, really looked at me for the first time in what felt like forever. "But how? How do I fix this?" Her voice cracked. "He's still my husband. I don't know how to walk away." I squeezed her hand. "You don't have to fix him. You only need to fix yourself. And that starts with believing that you can. You've been living in his shadow for so long. It's time to step out of it." She took a deep breath, the kind of breath you take before you decide to make a change, before you break free of the chains you've allowed yourself to wear for far too long. We sat down together, and I could see the wheels turning in her mind. She wasn't all the way there yet, but she was close. "I found something else," I said quietly, pulling out another folder of documents. "Something he never meant for you to see." Serena's hands shook as she opened the folder. Her eyes darted from one page to the next. Her breath quickened as she saw the transfers, the signatures, the pattern of manipulation that Wayland had so carefully constructed. This is all real?" she asked, her voice trembling. I nodded. "It's all real. And we're going to make sure he doesn't get away with it." The silence that followed was thick. Serena's gaze never left the papers, and I knew her mind was racing. Everything was clicking into place now, each lie he had fed her suddenly unraveling. And yet, I could see the guilt in her eyes, the guilt of not seeing it sooner, of not leaving him sooner. "I should have known," she whispered. "I should have seen it." I shook my head. "You were never meant to see it, Serena. He made sure of that. But it's not too late. You can still fight back." She looked at me, tears welling up in her eyes. "What if I can't?" "You already are," I said, the strength in my voice surprising even me. "You've taken the hardest step by accepting the truth. Now we take the next one, together." Just then, my phone rang. It was the lawyer. I looked at Serena before I answered, needing her reassurance. She nodded. I picked up the phone, my voice steady, even though I could feel the weight of everything I had to do bearing down on me. "Yes? We're ready to move forward," the lawyer said. "We have enough evidence to take him to court. It's time to end this." I looked over at Serena, who was still staring at the evidence in her lap. She hadn't moved. Her face was unreadable, but I saw the change in her. The realization that she was no longer the passive bystander. She was taking control. I took a deep breath. "Let's do it." As I hung up the phone, the reality of what we were about to do hit me. I wasn't just fighting for Serena anymore. I was fighting for myself too. For all the years I had stood by, watching my sister suffer in silence, I was done being quiet. I looked at Serena, my voice firm. "This is it. No turning back." She nodded, her chin lifting. "I'm ready." The fear was still there, but so was the resolve. And for the first time in years, I felt like we could both breathe again. The courtroom felt different today. The air was dense, heavy with expectation, and my heart hammered with every step I took toward the witness stand. I had done all I could to prepare for this moment, gathered the evidence, interviewed the witnesses, analyzed every detail of the case. But now, with every second that passed, the tension felt more suffocating. I couldn't afford to falter. This wasn't just about proving Wayland was guilty. It was about making sure that Serena, after everything, could finally breathe again. And maybe, just maybe, for the first time, I could start to breathe too. Serena was seated in the front row of the courtroom. She was no longer the trembling, uncertain woman who had been too afraid to speak up. Now, she sat tall, still fragile, yes, but with something stronger in her eyes. Hope. A small but significant change from the woman I had watched fade into the background for so long. I knew she was terrified. She had been all along, but something in her had shifted. I could see it in the way she clenched her hands in her lap, in the way she looked at Wayland when he stood up to make his defense. And then there was him. Wayland. The man who had made a career out of controlling everyone around him. He stood at the table, his back straight, his gaze never faltering. His lawyer beside him, a shadow of his arrogance, whispering quick reassurances. But Wayland's eyes, those cold, calculating eyes, were starting to betray him. The confidence was starting to crack. He knew the truth was coming. And so did I. I took my place at the podium, my hand steady despite the storm brewing in my chest. The judge gave a short nod, signaling for me to begin. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," I started, my voice clear and firm, "what you are about to hear is not the story of one night. It is the story of years of manipulation and control." I paused, letting the words sink in. The weight of them felt like a stone in my chest. But I couldn't afford to hesitate. Not now. Wayland Pierce used every trick in the book to control his wife, I continued. From financial manipulation to emotional abuse, this was not a single incident. This was a pattern. A plan to break Serena down, to make her believe that she was nothing without him. I could feel the eyes of the jury on me, their attention fixed on every word I said. My voice didn't waver. If anything, it grew more forceful as I went on. "We have the evidence. We have his words, his actions, and his lies. This wasn't an accident. This was abuse. This was control." I could see Wayland's face tighten. His fingers twitched at his sides, but he remained standing, his posture rigid. He was trying to hold on to whatever dignity he thought he had left, but I knew that was slipping. I turned to look at Serena, who had her head down, her hands folded tightly in her lap. Her face was pale, but there was a strength in her eyes that hadn't been there before. She was finally seeing the truth. And she was ready to speak it. I took a deep breath, knowing that the next part of the trial was the hardest. Serena's testimony. The moment that would either tear this case wide open or leave us grasping at straws. She took the stand with a tremble in her hands. But she stood, and that was enough for me. She was here. She was ready. As she sat in the witness chair, her voice shook, but she held her ground. I trusted him. I thought I loved him. I believed everything he said. That's how he made me feel. I didn't know I was being controlled, but I do now. The words came slow, but they were steady, and with each one, I saw the walls she'd built around herself start to crumble. She was letting go of her fear, bit by bit. "I never thought he could hurt me," she continued. "But he did. I felt it. Every time he told me I was being dramatic, that I was too emotional. I didn't realize it then, but I see it now. He controlled me. He made me feel like I was crazy, like I was the problem." Her voice cracked as she finished. She wiped at her eyes, but the words had already been said. The truth had been spoken. The silence in the courtroom was deafening. Even Wayland seemed to pause, his usual confidence faltering for just a second. But then he spoke, his voice defensive, shaking. "She's lying. She's just confused. This is a mistake. Everything she's saying is a lie. I never meant to hurt anyone." I could feel the shift in the room. The jury was watching closely now. The manipulation that had held them captive for so long was starting to lose its grip. Wayland was losing control. But that wasn't enough. I needed more. "Wayland," I said, stepping forward, "you didn't just hurt her. You've been hurting her for years. And you've been lying to everyone about it." His face twisted into a sneer. "You don't know anything about me. You're just a lawyer who thinks she can play games with my life." I didn't flinch. "You think this is a game?" You think this is something I'm doing for fun? You've used people like your pawns for too long. And now, it's time for you to face the consequences of your actions. He opened his mouth to respond, but I cut him off. You don't get to hide behind lies anymore. Not in this courtroom. Not with me here. There was a moment of silence. A tension so thick it was like I could feel it pressing down on my chest. Wayland's eyes flashed with something, a flicker of fear, a crack in his armor. I could see it, even if no one else did. The jury was watching him, and they saw it too. I turned to the jury, speaking with more conviction. You've heard the facts. You've seen the evidence. Now, it's time to decide, who will you believe? The man who hides behind his lies, or the woman who's finally found the strength to speak the truth? The court went silent as the judge called for a brief recess. The jury was sent out to deliberate, and we all waited. Lyra's mind was buzzing, her thoughts racing faster than she could process. She could feel the weight of everything on her shoulders. Serena was starting to see the truth, but would the jury? Would they understand the pain Serena had been through, the manipulation she had endured for years? Her heart beat wildly in her chest. The fight wasn't over yet. It was only just beginning. The hallway outside the courtroom felt like a long, dark tunnel, and I was standing at the very edge, knowing the light at the end was still far off. Serena was beside me, her arm wrapped tightly through mine, both of us waiting for the moment we had been anticipating for what felt like a lifetime. She wasn't trembling anymore. There was still fear in her eyes, but beneath that fear was something else, something stronger. Maybe it was the realization that the truth would finally be told, or maybe it was the weight of the years she had spent locked in a cage built from lies. Either way, she wasn't the same woman who had walked into this courtroom days ago. I glanced over at her, seeing the fatigue etched into her face. But there was strength there, too. She had found it. Finally. I wished I could say I felt the same. The truth, as it always does, had a cost. And the closer we got to the verdict, the heavier that cost became. Wayland was sitting on the opposite side of the hall, his back straight, his arms crossed, staring ahead as if he could force the world into submission with sheer will. I saw him, and I felt nothing but disgust. But also something else. Something colder. Something final. This was the moment of reckoning for him, and I couldn't wait to see how he would squirm when the weight of his lies finally crushed him. I can't do this anymore, Serena whispered, her voice barely audible. You can, I said, looking down at her hand holding mine. You've already done it. He doesn't control you anymore. He never will again. Her fingers tightened around mine, but she didn't speak. I could see her mind working, wrestling with the past. She had lived under his control for so long. He'd conditioned her to believe the worst of herself. To question everything. To feel unworthy of love, unworthy of trust. To feel alone in the world when all she had to do was reach out to the one person who was still there. And now, standing here, she was finally fighting for herself. She was fighting for the truth. I heard the faint murmur of voices as the door to the courtroom opened. It was time. Serena and I exchanged a look, one last shared moment of understanding. Neither of us knew what the jury would decide, but in that moment, I knew we had already won. As we walked into the courtroom, the walls seemed to close in on us. The harsh fluorescent lights overhead cast long shadows, making the room feel sterile, almost cold. The tension was suffocating, and I could feel the weight of every gaze in the room as the jury filed back into place. I took my seat, the rustling of papers and the shuffle of shoes echoing around me. I didn't look at Wayland. I didn't need to. His presence was palpable, but I didn't want to give him the satisfaction of acknowledging his existence. The judge called the room to order. The jury is ready to deliver its verdict. The words hit me like a slap to the face, the finality of it sinking in. The room was completely silent now, every person waiting with bated breath for the one word that would determine everything. Serena's breath hitched beside me, and I took her hand in mine again. This was it. This was the moment when we would know if everything we'd fought for was enough. Do you, the jury, find the defendant guilty or not guilty of the charges against him? The judge asked. There was a long pause, the air in the room thick with anticipation. I could feel my heart pounding, each beat louder than the last. The foreperson stood, and my gaze snapped to them. This was the moment of truth. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty, the foreperson said. The words reverberated in my chest, a wave of disbelief and relief crashing over me. I turned to Serena. Her face was pale, but her eyes were wide with shock, disbelief mixing with something else, something almost like awe. The man who had controlled her for so long, the man who had caused her so much pain, was finally going to pay for it. Wayland stood up immediately, his face flushed with anger. "This is wrong," he shouted, his voice trembling with the rage he was trying to suppress. "You don't understand. You're making a mistake. She's lying. She's been manipulated." The courtroom was silent, every eye on him as he tried to maintain his composure. But I saw it. I saw the cracks forming, the facade that had held him together for so long starting to crumble. Serena's sobs were quiet, but they were there, in the back of my mind. They were a release. She had lived so long in the shadow of those lies. She had held on to them so tightly, convinced that this was her reality, and that it was the only one she deserved. But now? The truth had shattered that reality, and for the first time in years, Serena was free. As Wayland continued his outburst, the security guards moved forward. One of them stepped toward him, ready to escort him out. Wayland's face twisted with fury. "You'll regret this," he yelled, his voice laced with venom. I stood, my body tense, but there was no fear in me now. Only certainty. "No, Wayland. You will regret this. You've built your entire life on lies, and now they're falling apart." I walked away from him, toward Serena, who was still in shock, her hands shaking as she wiped at her tears. I leaned down, gently brushing her hair back. "It's over, Serena," I said softly, my voice steady. "You're free." She nodded slowly, a hesitant smile breaking through her tears. "I don't know if I can believe it yet," she whispered, "but I want to. I want to finally believe that I'm free." I smiled softly. "You are." The guards led Wayland out of the courtroom, still shouting, still desperate to maintain control. But it was too late. His empire of lies was crumbling, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. The truth had won. The air in the courtroom felt different. It was charged with the weight of what was coming, the lingering tension in the room so thick I could almost taste it. I could feel it in my chest, a steady drumbeat that didn't let up, each thud an echo of the moment we were all waiting for. Serena, beside me, gripped my hand tightly. Her knuckles were white, her body tense, but her eyes were wide with something like hope, something like fear. I didn't know what to say to her, not now. Words wouldn't be enough. Nothing would be enough to calm the storm we were about to face. The courtroom was still. The judge's gavel hit the wood with a sharp echo, cutting through the silence. The foreperson stood. My heart stopped for a moment as I watched her adjust her glasses, her hands trembling ever so slightly. The moment had arrived. "We, the jury, find the defendant guilty." There was a collective gasp. I saw Serena's face crumple, the tears welling up as if someone had opened the floodgates, but she didn't let them fall just yet. She looked at me, and I saw something change in her. Not relief, not yet. But something like peace, peace that had eluded her for so long. For a moment, everything was still. Time froze. The years of pain, of manipulation, of fear, gone in one sentence. One word. But then, Wayland reacted. He leapt from his seat, his face red with fury. "This is a mistake," he shouted, his voice raw with desperation. "This isn't real. You're all blind." Serena's hand tightened in mine. I felt her tremble, and it tore at me, but I couldn't look away from Wayland. This was it. The moment he had spent years carefully constructing was falling apart before him. "You're wrong," I said, my voice steady, my hand holding Serena's with an unwavering grip. "You're not in control anymore, Wayland." His face twisted in a grotesque sneer as he took a step toward me, his finger pointing in my direction. "You think this is justice?" he spat, his words sharp and cutting. "You think you've won?" "I know I've won," I said firmly, "and so does everyone else in this room." Serena's breath hitched beside me, and I felt her fingers loosen their grip just slightly. I knew she was still processing it all, still trying to comprehend the words she'd just heard. It was a lot to take in, but I also knew one thing. She was strong. Stronger than she ever gave herself credit for. And now, in this moment, she was fighting alongside me. We had done it. Wayland's anger wasn't done, though. He turned to the judge, his face twisted in disbelief. "You can't do this. You'll regret this. You don't know who you're dealing with." But the judge didn't even acknowledge him. Instead, the courtroom doors opened, and the guards stepped in to escort him out. I watched as they led him away, the weight of everything we'd been through crashing down on me. All of the lies, all of the manipulation, all of the power he had held over us for so long, it was gone. And I couldn't help but feel a strange satisfaction in watching him finally crumble. The facade he had worn for years, the mask of the good husband, the charming man, now all that was left was the bitter truth, exposed for everyone to see. But it wasn't over yet. Wayland still had his parting words, still tried to make himself the victim. I saw him turn back toward us, his face filled with fury. "This isn't the end," he growled, his eyes darting between Serena and me. "I will make you regret this. You won't be able to run from me forever." I stood tall, my eyes locked on his, not backing down for a second. "We're not running anymore, Wayland. You are." The doors slammed shut behind him, and the silence in the room deepened. The weight of the verdict was still settling in, but I knew that this moment, this victory, was ours. Serena's. Mine. The truth had won, and no matter how much Wayland tried to twist it, no matter how many threats he made, the truth was unbreakable. In the hallway, the noise of the bustling courtroom seemed distant. I could hear the faint murmur of voices, the shuffle of footsteps, but it felt like we were in a bubble, Serena and I, standing there together, feeling the ground beneath us shift. I reached for Serena's hand, guiding her away from the crowds. We didn't need anyone else's approval. We had come this far, and we weren't going to let anything, anyone, take that from us now. "I can't believe it's over," she whispered, her voice a mixture of disbelief and relief. "It's not over yet," I said softly, turning to face her. "But we've won. And that's enough for now." She nodded, a small, tentative smile breaking through the haze of everything she had been through. "I feel like I can breathe again." As we walked down the hall, I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't the end of her journey, it was just the beginning. The beginning of healing. The beginning of reclaiming her life. But even as we took those first steps into the unknown, I knew one thing for sure, we had made it. And no one could take that away from us. The morning light filtered through the half-drawn curtains, its soft golden glow creeping across the room. It wasn't the kind of light that celebrated victories. No, it was gentler than that, fragile, almost like the early morning silence before everything else started. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the pile of court documents, old photos, and notes scattered in front of me. It had been 6 months since the verdict. 6 months since Wayland was locked away behind bars, his lies exposed for all to see. And yet, every piece of paper in front of me felt like it was still tied to the past, still wrapped in the weight of everything we had endured. My fingers traced the edges of an old picture of Serena. It was taken the night of her baby's shower, long before the hospital visit, long before everything turned dark. She looked so hopeful in that photo, so innocent, smiling without a care in the world. I couldn't help but wonder how long she'd been living in that illusion. Serena was sitting on the couch now, not too far from where I was. She had her sketchpad open, but I could tell she wasn't drawing. She hadn't picked up a brush or pencil in weeks, not since the trial. She was trying, I could see that, trying to piece herself back together, but the cracks were still there. They would be for a while. I knew that. I glanced at the clock, 10:30 a.m. It was still early, but the weight of the silence in the apartment pressed on me, more heavy than comforting. I wanted to help. I had spent months doing everything I could to give Serena the tools she needed to survive, to recover. But some days, it didn't feel like enough. Some days, I felt like I was the one still broken. It wasn't that I had forgotten about the trial, how could I, but the weight of it had shifted. I could finally let my guard down, and yet, I still found myself looking over my shoulder, waiting for the other shoe to drop. I stood up, needing to move. The quiet of the apartment felt suffocating at times. Serena looked up from her sketchpad, her eyes meeting mine. There was a soft understanding there, an unspoken bond we shared now that we hadn't had before. We had both been through too much for anything else. She set her pad down on the table and sighed. "I don't know what to do with this." Her voice was barely above a whisper. She gestured at the blank canvas on the other side of the room, untouched for weeks. "I want to paint. I want to do something, anything, but I don't know how to begin." I walked over to her, crouching down beside her chair. "You don't have to do anything right now, Serena. Healing doesn't have a timeline. It doesn't work the way you think it does. I know you want to start over. I do too. But there's no rush." Serena looked at me, her eyes searching mine, almost like she wanted to say something but couldn't find the words. It broke my heart a little to see that, her fighting so hard to speak the things she kept inside. I keep waiting for it to be over, she said softly. Like I'll wake up one day and everything will be fixed. But it's not. And I don't know if it ever will be. I gently placed a hand on her shoulder, squeezing it lightly. It will get better. But it takes time. It's not about fixing everything at once. It's about taking each step, slowly, until you're standing on your own again. She nodded, though I could see the doubt still lingering in her eyes. The quiet moment between us was interrupted by the sound of the mail slot downstairs. Serena sighed, already knowing what was coming. The letter that arrived that morning was unexpected. From another survivor. A woman who had been following the case, Serena's case, after seeing it in the news. The woman's words felt like a cold rush of air, bringing the reality of everything back. She had been in a similar situation, trapped in a marriage built on lies, on manipulation. And now, here she was, reaching out. Looking for someone to help her, just as Serena had. Just as I had. I handed the letter to Serena, who hesitated before taking it from my hands. As she read the words, I could see her face shift, a quiet pain mixing with something else, recognition, relief, even hope. She said she thought no one would believe her. Just like I did. Serena's voice broke on the last word. She dropped the letter on the table and wiped her eyes. I leaned forward, my voice quiet but firm. Then maybe we show her she's wrong. Serena looked at me, her face full of questions, confusion still clouding her eyes. How? How do we even begin to help her? I thought for a moment, then slowly smiled. We don't have to have all the answers. We just need to start somewhere. We've already shown people the truth. Now we help others see it too. There was something in her eyes, something raw, but determined. And I knew, right then, that she was ready. Ready to stop hiding. Ready to step into the world and help others who had been left in the dark, just like she had been. The phone rang then, breaking the silence. Serena glanced at me, and I gave her a reassuring nod. She picked it up. Hello? Her voice was steady, but I could tell she was still processing everything. The past. The future. Her face softened as the conversation continued, and I could see the change in her. This was no longer the woman who had been silenced for so long. She was speaking up. Her voice was firm, not trembling anymore. I stepped back, letting her handle the call. I had always been the one to protect her, but now, I realized, it was her turn. She was taking her power back, one step at a time. When she hung up, she looked at me and smiled. That was the woman from the letter. She wants to meet. A sense of peace washed over me. This wasn't just about us anymore. This was bigger than us. It was about the women who still felt trapped in their own silence, in the lies they had been told. Serena wasn't just healing for herself, she was healing for them too. I walked over and put my arm around her. You're doing it. You're helping them. And in that moment, I realized, maybe I was helping too. Maybe we both were. Slowly, we were rebuilding. Together. The road ahead was still long, and there would be days when we stumbled, when the weight of everything would feel too much. But in that moment, the soft morning light streaming through the window felt like the first step toward something better. We weren't healed, not yet. But we were finally free. Before we end this story, let me leave you with something to think about. No one deserves to live under the shadow of manipulation and abuse, no matter who they are or how long they've endured it. But the truth has a way of rising to the surface, no matter how deep it's buried. Serena's journey, like so many others, shows us that reclaiming your voice is the first step toward freedom. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever felt like you've been silenced or controlled? How did you find your way out? Share your thoughts below, and don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss more stories like this. Stay strong, and remember, your truth is always worth fighting for.